What stranger will you never forget?
The lady who told me I looked great in blue, and that it was clearly my color. To this day, if I'm deciding between shirts to buy or wear, I'll go with blue. That compliment was about 15 years ago at least.
My lost wallet was returned in the mail. The anonymous stranger sent it back at their own expense, $9.75 postage, with all the money, credit cards, driver's license, and other items intact. Nothing was missing. A note enclosed read, "Please do something kind for a stranger whenever you have the opportunity."
I was driving down south with my girlfriend. We have a blowout, so I put on the donut. The donut blows out while we're exiting the very next exit. So there we are, maybe 19 and at least 100 miles from anyone we know, at a gas station in the middle of nowhere. I'm thinking on what to do next, and probably looked like there was something wrong, so this older man offered to help. He drives me 20 or so minutes to a junkyard to get a cheap tire. Then he puts the tires on the rim with no more than a pry bar and some soapy water. Had a compressor on his truck, so he aired it up and I put it on. And we went on our way.
Took a train to NYC by myself for the first time. I was 18. Second time to NYC, first time ever on a train. I told the kiosk lady that I'd never been on a train before and asked if she might give me a quick rundown of what to do. Another train station employee was nearby and was so interested and amused that I was taking a train for the first time and was alone. He walked me through what to do, down to the smallest detail. No judgment, no meanness. He was just a guy with a silly disposition, delighting in a young person's naivety, breaking up the doldrums of his week. I aspire to be that way when people ask me for help. Thanks, Frank P. You were a peach.
I volunteer at a suicide hotline. Some guy, Bob, called in and we started talking about his home situation. Nothing absolutely horrendous, but he felt trapped and stressed and felt like he didn't have options. When people use language like that, our training says we should ask if they are thinking of suicide. Many volunteers have trouble with this. But if you mention suicide to someone who is not suicidal, it doesn't make them more suicidal, they just correct you and say, "No. I feel more like XYZ. So I asked Bob, you're using a lot of language that people use when they're thinking of suicide. Are you thinking of suicide?" There was a pause, and then a huge wail. I could hear so much pain in his voice. I listened to him cry for at least 5 minutes. I've talked to people who had suicidal ideation before. It would be better if I were dead, kind of thinking, but with no plan. Bob said yes, he was considering suicide, and we talked it out a bit more. After the pause and wail, that was the most concerned I've ever been for a human being outside my family. This wasn't just talking, I felt like he had already made up his mind about it, which was so scary. I only know what he told me. I know he was in his car parked somewhere. I know we got a few short laughs out of each other and we made some plans for him. Plans are important because it gives you a sense that if he has something to do, to plan for, he can't commit suicide. Anyway, he truly is a stranger. I don't know his real name or what he looks like. I just know his story, and I know that he was in immense pain that day. He had a particular kind of accent, and whenever I meet someone with that same accent, I think of him and hope he's okay.
When I was a broke as sin 18-year-old trying to make ends meet, I had a side hustle providing IT support for households, like a Geek Squad sort of thing. In practice, I would mostly set up computers for elderly people and the tech illiterate, and teach them how to use them. Or get them out of technical binds, usually with printers, by Googling on their behalf. This elderly Korean gentleman hired me to set up his new computer for him. I spent an hour setting it up and teaching him how to use it, and 2 more hours eating a wonderful lunch with the man and his wife. He wouldn't accept my invoice for just the first hour. Instead, he paid me 3x my hourly rate for all 3 hours, and asked me to come back to train him the next week. Over the course of about a month I came back 4 times, worked with him, had a lovely meal, and he would tell me about his family and his kids. He was so proud of his daughter, who was about to finish her residency and become a pediatrician. By the end of the month he was pretty comfortable on the PC, and I thanked him profusely for how kind he was and how ridiculously he'd overpaid me. He told me I reminded him of his son, who was estranged for some reason I didn't press, and that he hoped somewhere out there somebody was being kind to his son, and sharing a home-cooked meal with him. I don't know why, but more than 10 years later I can't think of that guy without tearing up. I hope everything turned out well for him.
I was in the laundry with my dog and an old man with his dog approached. Our pets met and the man said when Jesus said love your neighbor as you love yourself, only the dogs understood it after that we had a small chat. Then he left and I have never seen him again. I will never forget that man.
Was on a solo trip to Amsterdam last year, partying it up as one does. Was at a bar having a few drinks, and a gorgeous British woman a seat or two over from me, mid-20s, grabs my arm. I'm a very gay-looking man by the way, and starts going on about how good it is to see me. I got the hint and noticed an older guy bothering her and her friend, played along with them as their long-lost BFF until he left. We ended up spending the rest of the night bar crawling and getting trashed together, having the best time. I'll never forget you, B.
My son was a week old, and had to go to the doctor. I had severe early onset postpartum depression, and I hadn't slept more than an hour at a time since his birth. I locked my keys, phone, and son in the car. This incredibly wonderful older couple calmed me down, called CAA, parked beside my car and sat with me until the tow truck came and unlocked the car. The tow driver refused payment. I will never forget those three people.
A little old Jamaican man came into work and gave me a rosary. He doesn't know me, but he told me he thought I could do with his prayers. I'm agnostic, but I put that rosary on my name badge, and when times are hard and customers are abusive, I play with it. It doesn't remind me that God is watching over me, but it does remind me that there is some good left in humanity.
In college, I was dating a girl. I really loved her, but I realized that we were incompatible and we had to break up. So I downed a handle of vodka by myself in my dorm. I was drunk as beep but still feeling beep, so I decided to head to the bars and drink some more. I actually don't remember if I made it there or not, but I remember getting off the bus from having come from the bars and was too wasted to continue the relatively short walk to my dorm. I decided to just lay down where I was at, which was quite literally the gutter next to the railing. Luckily it was an empty gutter, but a gutter nonetheless. This complete bro dude comes by and sees me laying in the gutter and helps me up. He helps me walk back to my dorm, and on the struggle there he asked me what's wrong. I explained the situation. I don't remember much of anything from the conversation, but I do remember him saying something to the effect of, bro, your problems aren't gonna be solved at the bottom of a bottle.
A translator I met in Iraq. He had worked with the Red Cross through the Balkan Wars of the 90s, and had been taken prisoner half a dozen times. The last time, he was beaten so badly that the nerve damage cost him the use of his right arm. It was 90% immobile. After 10 years without the use of his right arm, a surgeon offered to operate on him, with the understanding that if he failed, they would just amputate. So he went under the knife, not knowing if he would wake up with a working arm or a stump. After 5 years of physical therapy, learning how to use his arm again, he signed up to work as a translator in the war in Iraq, because he saw how many innocent Iraqis were being killed by American forces due to the communications barrier. When I met him, he had been there for 3 years, while his wife and 2 kids were in America. I always try to be a good person, but I know I'll never be as good as that.
A fine young man on the bus I took to Orlando. So sexy, and we started talking as we waited for the last long leg to Orlando. We talked in line as we got on the bus, and sat next to each other the whole time, just talking and even flirting a bit. He was funny and thoughtful, but we knew we were just passing the time. Still, we talked so candidly during those last few hours that it made a real impression on me. We didn't exchange numbers or anything, but we both wished each other the best as he got off the stop before mine. I don't even remember his name and probably wouldn't know him if I saw him, but I remember the feeling of talking with him and, weirdly enough, even miss him. Hope he's alright.
I was in my freshman year of college, and while alone in my dorm room, a light fixture fell on my head, giving me a concussion and a major gash. After being taken to the hospital and getting 10 staples in the scalp and simultaneously being diagnosed with a raging UTI, I was dumped in the parking lot with glass in my hair and blood covering my face and 15 miles away from the campus at 2 a.m. This was before Uber, and I didn't know who I could call to help me. A female cop drove by and offered to take me back to campus. Along the way, she stopped at a CVS and paid for my prescriptions out of her own pocket. Once back at campus, she made sure I got back to my room and let my RA know what had happened and to keep an eye on me. I truly don't know what I would have done without her. I was freshly 17, new to the area, it was very rural, I didn't have my wallet, and I was bleeding and concussed. I will forever be grateful for her help.
I live in a third world country, and at that time we didn't have most of the things the US had. I was 19, now 28. 2 months after I left my a-hole parents. It was hard but not to the point I regretted my decision. Went to nearby store to stock up on ramen cups and maybe a can of beer after 5 days of pulling weeds and mowing lawns. A third of my clients were Karens, but I really couldn't complain. Cashier stares at me, and I assumed he was thinking I was gonna steal because of what I was wearing. A beanie, a ragged jacket, sweatpants, a big bag and Crocs. Did you run away? I stopped putting things in my basket to look at him. What? I asked in confusion. I was too surprised to say anything else. Lol. Your bag. I always see those bags with runaway kids. In fact, you're my 23rd runaway kid that I've met. And I'm not counting those that are under the age of 9. It made even more surprised. I was 19, I only finished high school. I always thought runaway kids were at least near the same age as me. Didn't know there were kids under 9 that had to run away. He shrugs and beckoned me to come over. By the looks of it, you're already over the legal age to drink. I have an auntie who has a restaurant, I can drive you there and I can ask her for you to be a waitress. He was Seuss. How he was helping someone he just met. But at that time, at my age and at my mental health capabilities, I just said beep it, if I'm gonna die, I'm gonna die trying. Went with him and I got a small job till I was able to start up an art business. Got commissions and everything started going brighter. I'm not in contact with the cashier anymore after moving to my own apartment, later a 3-story house, but I still am with the auntie and 3 of my coworkers, who were runaway kids as well. 17, 15, 12 respectively. All ran away because of abuse, not the brightest moment or decision in my life, but probably one of the most funniest. I wasn't willing to die by suicide, but I was willing to die by kidnapping LMAO.
I was at a pool bar at a resort in Jamaica. A British lady next to me asked me the most random question, which turned into a nearly 3-hour conversation. The question, what is a redneck? It was a lot more difficult to explain than I thought it would be. I didn't realize that was an unknown concept to a lot of Brits.
I was 17, and I broke up for the first time and was feeling pretty bad, just received some bad exam results, my parents were threatening divorce the day before, was told my only grandparent I ever had was sick and possibly on her way, and missed my ride home, well because I was busy being dumped. So I was waiting at the cab stand during a bad time of the day. Around 7 p.m., a black lady was sitting next to me, and asked me if I was okay. To understand the context of this, my country doesn't have many black people, many who do are students and there's a perception of them here for no good reason, e.g. scamming, joining gangs, prostitution etc., which was an issue where I lived because of the number of colleges. So usually parents would say don't go near the black peoples. Anyway, I was a bit hesitant to make conversation with her, but she took an old picture of some saint and told me to take it. I didn't want to because I was afraid it was one of the common scams where a woman gives you something, shouts robbery/rape and her friends come out and extort money and beat you up etc. So I just politely refused and got into a cab that just arrived. Before I got into the door, she crumpled it and threw it into the door. As the cab moved, I picked it up anyway, and it read everything will be fine. Someday, pass it along to someone who needs this message more than you. I felt so terribly ashamed that at that age I was already discriminating against people who I barely knew, but I think that incident helped me open up my mind. TLDR. I was being a bigot generalizing racist, but someone helped me by tossing an encouraging message into the cab I was getting into after I tried fending her off, on a day where everything was going wrong in life.
I was walking on the street and a person came to me and said if I had any money. I gave him some. He looked at the money, told me it was sinful, and returned it to me. It was really weird. The money was my hard-earned money.
An Irish guy, not in Ireland, who spoke with such a strong accent that I couldn't make out a single word. To this day I question whether it was just a prank.
That one cute girl that you saw on vacation with your parents and you locked eyes but never saw again.
The one who gave me gas money when I pulled up to the pumps and my debit card wouldn't work. I was on E.
May your day be filled with joy and happiness. And please remember to like, share, and subscribe for more quality content every day.